Do you ever see things when you're traveling? Now, you travel a lot. You have a lot of friends. You have invitations to preach away. Do you ever see things that do you get ideas when you're out, say among other congregations, or things you might say tweak, or things you might say no,
Yeah,
don't care
yeah,
for that.
yeah. All the time. I'm blessed in that way that, I get to, or I'm asked to go and preach and, lead sessions and teach groups. And um I want to say that that's a blessing. So when you get to do that, you get to see, even locally, you get to
Mhm.
see how other ministries do what they do. And I've been blessed also to be on staff and to serve in four very unique, maybe five very unique ministries, that very different settings for each. A Rising Sun, which is inner city, smaller numerically in congregation, huge in impact, right?
Okay.
So you have that as my upbringing, and because we were smaller in number, I got to do everything. I got to, um, play the drums
Mhm.
and play my saxophone and lead worship and preach and learn how to, do all these things. And if there was a snowstorm, me, my dad, my uncle, God rest his soul, Uncle B, we would jump out there with the shovel and we'd do that. So this kind of sense of being able to do anything comes out of that. And then I've been in, Richmond, serving under Pastor Stevens, a couple of hundred folks at that time in a startup, in a plant. New Life Empowerment Temple was a
Okay.
plant. So I know what it is to be in a plant. I know what it is, to have a strong female leader, strong woman leader, and that dynamic in a suburban setting. Then went to a country setting, in Texas City, and they had 1,000 plus. So now you're in a very large, congregation that's in the country. And then you have this metropolis of a Wheeler Avenue,
Mhm.
the third ward, Houston, Texas, a major city with a bajillion members, 15,000 to 20,000, whatever it is now. And so being able to see all that and then come home to 31st Street,
Mhm.
we're sitting at about just shy of 700 now, in a major city, but in a smaller city. I've been able to see a little bit of everything just in my own experience. And so, I'm always grateful to go other places and learn and see, what some folks do really, really well, that we can maybe borrow, and what we do really well that I'm grateful for. There's sometimes I go and I'm just like, whew, so glad I get to go back to 31st Street, right?
Okay.
So in that regard, I think that there's some things we do amazing, even that are small, like that may be small to some people, but aren't small to me. So, I know that there's a tug of war about sound, from you all's perspective and sitting in the audience. We're still working and tweaking our audio visual. But for me as the preacher, like, I think we have the best sound in the city,
Okay.
because I've been around. So I know I don't leave 31st Street hoarse. Whereas if I go to certain other places, I'm
Oh,
really pushing my voice because they don't have what we have. So
okay.
you have the opportunity as you travel to say thank you, Lord, for certain things.
Uh-huh.
And then you have the opportunity to say, these are things I'd love to pick up on. This past week I was at Abner Baptist Church, and here in Glen Allen. And I saw, and I mentioned to them just the way that they have a system for hospitality is something I think we can borrow some things from,
Mhm.
because hospitality is one of those cultural values I want us to build.
All right. Yes.
So I'm always looking at how does a church welcome visitors?
Mhm.
How does a church welcome guests? Guest preachers, guest leaders, speakers, teachers, whoever. What is that flow like? I'm always looking at, small things that aren't small, like, is your bathroom clean?
Okay.
What does it
Yes.
smell like in the
Sure.
building? Is there signage? Because
Mhm.
I'm always looking at what is this church experience like for the foreigner, right? For somebody that is not an insider at your church,
Yes.
what are we doing to ensure they have a great experience? So I had the benefit of going this year to, in July, the Builders Conference in Maryland, at the Union Church. Very fast growing church, and it's a plant, so they have a little more freedom, I think, to do some things. But what I was mentioning to some of my friends about the experience was that, there are some things that are just, it's not requiring more money of us, just one more step of hospitable
Okay.
effort. So on the parking lot, the way we were greeted on the parking lot as our cars drove in, before we got out, we were greeted.
Okay.
There were maybe 5 touches before I ever sat in my seat from the hospitality. If I looked like I was lost, there was somebody there to say, "Hey, can I help you? What you looking for? What you need?" And a pleasant disposition.
Okay.
Let the church say a pleasant disposition.
Okay.
This is out in the foyer. And so, again, some of the things that I think make great churches aren't money tied. It's really effort and thought, forethought, and preparation. And so we've talked a bit about that. And in terms of worship, for me, is, how are we preparing for worship? Not just, what's knowing what songs we want to sing is great, and rehearsal is great. Those things are great. But also, how are we preparing for those that will come in? Those that we say we want to reach. All right, they've decided they're coming. How are we preparing to ensure that experience is wonderful for them, from the time that they get on the parking lot, even to the back room? If somebody decides to join, what is that experience like?
Right. Yeah.
And so that's important to me. And so I've seen in my travels even that experience. What does the back room
Okay.
look like, and why we've done some training this year on what that looks like, because that's important. All those touches are important. So I'm blessed by those travels, and I'm also blessed when I go to see. But we also are really good in these areas,
Okay.
and I'm so glad to get back home. Those kind of things.
Yeah. I made a little note here. When you were talking earlier, you said, come home to 31st. And I'm going, yeah, I like that sound. Come home. This is home. Okay.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it just flowed so smoothly,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Also, but that thing of hospitality, I know when I have been here in the church answering the phone, and someone may call and ask, you're going to go somewhere to speak, but they're asking, what are your needs? What do you need to your special needs? Because they want to be prepared for you. Which I thought, oh wow, that is great that someone checks on that.
Yeah, it's so I'll use Abner as an example, just because it's the most recent that I can remember. I was on the phone. I'm talking to Dr. Lori, and as I'm pulling up on the lot, and I believe she was an usher, but she was assigned. She was waiting for me to pull in that spot.
Okay.
By the time I could look up, she was standing at my door ready to, Dr. Mitchell, so glad to have you here. Is there anything I can carry? I'm assigned to take you to the office. Pastor's not here yet, but I'm going to open. I mean, it was,
Yes.
I could tell there had been training, there had been forethought, and the space was, prepared and all that kind of stuff. So, and again, these things don't cost money, but it left an impression on me.
Absolutely.
And I was like, oh, you know what? We can step that up one level,
Yes.
So for me, it's really a matter of hospitality is super important to me. I think in this season, because we have so many people who are visiting, so many people who are joining each week, and so the business term, I think, would be the equivalent in the corporate world would be the user experience. I want the people who are coming to have a wonderful experience, because they don't have to come.
Right.
And literally, with the internet and YouTube and Facebook, you could just stay home and watch your favorite whoever, teacher, preacher, whoever. So if you make the decision with all of the options that have been open in the pandemic, now literally the world is available to you. I want it to be an experience that makes you say, I want to come again.
Right.
And I think those are little touches that make a big difference. So our greeters ministry, shout out to our greeters ministry. I think that's super important, that we are vibrant and active on Sunday mornings. Welcome home, the signs, the
smiles.
the smiles.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Y'all are important. Our ushers are important. Who's leading you to your seat, how they're leading you to your seat is important. Our deacons are important for intake. What that experience is like in the back room is important. How we show up in worship. People are beat down all week long. Sometimes we're beat down all the week long.
Okay.
But I think I've said, if it's a beat down week, tag somebody else to come in, to do your part, because we want to make sure that it's something that is uplifting to folks who are sometimes holding on for their last. If you don't talk to me today, God, I'm out of here. You know what I'm saying? I'm not being dramatic. These are things I know. These are things that I've been told and experienced and sat with people, and so I want to make sure that whoever walks on our campus, member or non-member, guest, long time, they have a great user experience is the term, I think. And that is from the parking lot to the pulpit. I want you to feel welcome, warm, and I want you to be able to navigate our space. So one of the things, even with the trustees, that we're talking about is some new signage.
Okay.
That is designed to, and put a little modern refresh on the signage that we have, so people who are here for the first time don't know where to go. They know where to go. They can figure it out, and I think those little small things make a difference.
Yes, they do. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they do. Okay, 4 years out. 31st Street congregation. Let's look at that for a minute or two or three. You have a lot of seniors. You have they could be your great grandparents, your grandparents, your big sisters, brothers, and I want to know how that's going for you. And we also have a growing young adult population and a lot of children. So I want to know how it is working with all of those. And for instance, me, I'll just say I'll call myself either your maybe big sister. Although one time I can remember, I think we were getting ready. No, it was the early part when you were here, and we were just getting to start to work with one another. And I think it's in my head that you did. I'm not sure. You can correct me if I'm wrong. That you may have referred to me as a mother.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, no, because I don't consider myself one of the church mothers, because we have people in their 80s and 90s who I think of. So I thought that was presumptuous for me to think of myself as a church mother. Although I've got to say, I'm beginning to embrace that I am, I can be a church mother. I am getting in that area. But so again, because you're my first pastor who is younger than I am. So that's new for a lot of us, actually. So go there. What's that like with all of us?
I'm interested to flip the question for that reason. I'm interested to flip the question at some point, but I'm gonna come back to it.
Okay.
It has been beautiful, and the most delicate chord, I think, of the 4 years of the work. So beautiful in that we really are building an intergenerational church. Like, I can't speak to, again, I've got a blind spot in my leadership. I can't speak to 31st Street prior to March 2020, February 2020. When I visited you all, and I imagine that even when I visited you all, in hindsight, maybe, there's an excitement about a candidate coming, and so people just start coming, right? That maybe weren't always there every week, that kind of thing. So when I look at the pictures, I'm like, maybe, and when I hear the recollections of people who were around during the time, they don't match the picture I have from that day, which I think is good. I think it's a beautiful thing. People came out. But I think the beauty is, that we are building what I prayed that we would build, which is a space for everybody, multiple generations in one place. And I would say that it's beautiful to have on one hand young adults, because there's so many churches that can attract young adults that are reading my book and wanting to talk to me about getting young adults all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
So the fact that we have a growing young adult population that we are also trying to actively disciple with our First Tuesdays and trying to create a family out of them to not just come to church, but all right, we're starting to do life together. That's a special thing. The reemergence of our children's church is a special thing. When I hear, the numbers that are coming through, when I look at my own children who are part of it, it wasn't in place at the time. So, and again, I don't know what it was like before, but I do think it's beautiful that that's going, in my opinion, is going very well. And it presents a new challenge for me. The new challenge is, all right, what is the connector from this exciting children's church experience to their middle school and high school days?
Yes. Okay.
And I'm grateful for the work that Lisa Gibbs is doing, Youth in Celebration. But I'm wondering, do we need to add to that?
Okay.
And beyond our kind of monthly piece that we have for the fellowship, when our children are used to doing something every week now with children's church.
Okay.
What does it look like to leave 5th grade, 6th grade hyped up on every week I'm at children's church? So what's the next step of our evolution for them? So that's the new challenge for me as it relates to the younger generation and continuing to build. But it's beautiful to see every month we are baptizing a young person.
Yes.
Every single month. And there are churches who have not opened their pools in years. So I had to thank God for that. The other side of that is we have a very strong and established, still majority, that is, in terms of active membership, that is senior or middle age. And we saw that like church anniversary last year when we were all wearing our colors.
Right.
It's like, nah, we still run this, young whippersnappers. But that's a beautiful thing, because we don't just have seniors. As I said, we have active seniors. We have 80-year-old preachers on our roster that still preach.
Yes.
Shout out to Fred Christian. We have trustees who are in their 70s that are working every week. We have ministry leaders. We have people downstairs working with the kids in their 80s.
Yes.
Right? And so the challenge for me has been, one, having to reconcile with the fact I'm not going to make everybody happy.
Okay.
I can't. I don't have, there's not a way to do it. I thought there was maybe a way, but there is a way, I think, to ensure that every generation is seen, is active, and is heard and considered. So the way that we try to structure worship, and the music in particular, speaks to that, I hope. I'd like to see even more intentionality in the way that worship looks, because I think that, part of the reason we use Kaylee as an intern every week is she's a young adult face. So you have each generation, she's a generation maybe younger than me. So you have me, 30s, 40s. You have Kaylee in her 20s. You have probably a deacon that's reading in the 50s or 60s, that kind of thing. So we wanted to make sure everybody is seen and represented in the experience.
Yes. Okay.
But in terms of energy, there's only so much energy that I have. There's only so much capacity I personally have. So trying to make sure we're doing what we need to progress for the future generation requires a lot of time to build what we did not have.
Okay.
And the generation that is the seniors, that is, a large piece of it was already here, but you don't want them to feel like, as we're building this over here that we did not have, what am I, chopped liver? I don't, I don't matter anymore.
Okay.
So that has been a delicate balance, to answer your question. That's been a delicate balance. What has been helpful for me, which I hope to do more of, now that we do have some things that are kind of set and established for younger people, is I enjoy, like in December every year, that kind of meeting we have, Pastor and our senior saints, because I get to hear kind of how everybody's doing and feeling. I don't go to all of the progressive meetings. I let Progressive League do their thing. Unless they invite me, then I come by. It's kind of like being an honorary member of the book club. I always like to do my little thing with the book club.
Right.
But I just go when, those times I'm invited. But in general, I let that space be that space.
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoy those December meetings I have with the senior saints. And I want to do a little bit more of that, to hear how everybody's doing. What are you feeling? What are you needing? Because sometimes, even though there are spaces where we can express these things, we don't express them.
Right.
So, we kind of have conversations to the side where it's like, nah, I want you to talk to me. I'm not going to bite. And I hope that what we feel now in year 4.5 is there's a sense of knowing each other. Like I said earlier in our conversation, this is home for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not looking to go anywhere. I'm not looking to do anything. I hope that you all hear and know my heart by now. As we are in the middle of the 5th year together. I'm not trying to bite. I'm not trying to be a tyrant. I'm not trying to be a dictator. I try to listen, things that I try to listen for wisdom, but also hear. All right. So a good example, we were in a meeting. Somebody said, when are we going to go back for Sunday school? And you and I met.
Yes.
And I said, hey, the saint said Sunday school. Now, I have my thoughts about how to do that. But if I want people to feel like if there's a genuine desire, the pastor's going to hear it, not going to shoot it down. It might look differently, right? Because of however we're moving. And in this case, we're going to do this pilot in September of what being back here for
hearing
Sunday school,
it first right here,
right? Exclusive.
Yes.
Pew, 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 of what that can look like. But that's me listening to some of our older members who said this was important to me. And I'm not so hell bent on building something that would satisfy my own ego. Right? To the expense of running over people who have laid the foundation for what I'm working on and working with, and our family to me. And that's what's important, that I think in my own leadership, and I think Pastor Cosby and others, Rudy Rasmus, even my own, dad and his leadership, I lead from a place of family, and so you don't run over your family. Now, some of us aren't in great families, but you want to listen. You want to because we're family. So so in that way, I've said this in some other times, and I use them as an example because I know the pastor and I love the pastor, so I feel comfortable saying it. The kind of church that is all young adults, a place like a Life Church, RVA, with Pastor Vernon Gordon, who's one of my classmates, good brother, alpha brother, one of my brothers and friends. We're not going to be that. We're not going to be that. Not because we don't attract young adults, we do, but because we're intentionally trying to get them both. And keep them both. And so there's certain songs probably they're not going to do at Life Church, and certain groups they don't have. They don't have Progressive League of Life Church, right? And this is not to say that they don't have seniors that attend, but their marketing is their evangelism is very intentional. And so for me, it's like, okay, I don't want us to be Slewfoot Missionary Baptist Church that's on their way out the door. Right. So it can't be all God me, oh thy great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land and metered him. And it can't be all, progressively meetings. But I also think that there's a middle ground, and that's what we've tried to, I think, and that's why I say that's the delicate tension. Finding the middle ground that still keeps God me, oh thy as sacred, honored, and gives you enough of that Mother Whitaker is happy, right? But also something that Jay can bump to, or Jordan Champion can bump to at 17, that feels like what her experience is like, trying to meet Ramon Moore in the middle, that late 40s, early 50 crowd. It's a chasm. It's a chasm, and so it's delicate, but we're trying, and I think part of trying is listening. You know, it really is.
Listening.
It's trying
Okay.
to listen, and I try to show in leadership, you know, that I'm going to listen and try some stuff.
Okay.
And it won't always work, and we won't always keep it. But and it might not look the way that we think, you know. And one of the ones that is very personal for me that I hear often is it revolves around what it looks like to do that nutrition center again.
Okay.
You know, that comes up all the time.
Okay, I'm sure it does.
And so it's like I'm trying to build out what is manageable in terms of programming. Because we could jump out there and say, we're going to restart the thing, and we're going to do this and do that, and nobody will show up to volunteer.
Right, yes.
We won't have anything to give out, right? So, and is what we're asking, what we're providing, what people need.
That's it.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I think for me, it's been, I use that example, but we are trying to do once a month. Somebody asked about a clothes closet. We gave out clothes. We gave out hygiene products in May, you know, to specifically for single mothers. And that's something I want to do every month to start. That has some of the elements of the nutrition center, even without a fully functioning kitchen.
Right.
And if we can be open to say, okay, this isn't exactly what it used to be, but can we keep the spirit of something, right? So Men of the Village is another example.
Okay.
Has the same name, but are they meeting fifth Sunday by the corner window? That's not what we're trying to do.
Right. Yeah.
We kept the name for the spirit. They have a tandem leadership team. You got to remind more, along with a Freddie Oliver. And Freddie comes with his own leadership and his own ideas, mixed with some of my crazy ideas.
Okay.
Which I won't say on the broadcast because I don't want to get shot down. I'll pretend it was Freddie's idea when it comes out. And then you have Ramon, who has the I've been here at 31st Street. This is what it used to look like. Let's mix this all together.
Right. Mix.
Right.
Yes.
And so mixing is the approach. It doesn't always get us to where I think we can go the fastest, but I pray that it brings the most people with us as we progress. And I have settled in my spirit that I'm okay if that's our path.
Okay.
That our path is a mix in the middle that maybe we don't see on a year, 500 new young adults, but everybody has a piece of this puzzle that they need to continue to grow with God and worship in a vibrant way.
Okay. You know, this community has changed since we started a nutrition center many years ago. So we have to be attuned to what's our environment like now and what are the most pressing needs, which may not be one meal for one person, but maybe feeding the family.
Yeah.
And things like that. I wanted to go back to one thing. We often, on a podcast, we talked about our church language.
Yes.
Things that we talk about, I mean, we don't even have to say it. People know how to move, where to move, how to move, when to sit down, when to stand up. And when I was talking about the word mother, and I'm talking about church mother, because some people may not even have that language. I was thinking about the church you were talking about. There may not be a church mother there, and more traditional older churches they talk. So I just wanted to clarify, not biological mother, but the church mother.
And I love that you mentioned that when we talk about language, and I also want to talk about tradition before we break into the next session, because I think that keeping the spirit of something while innovating how to do it is the only way that we can progress.
Okay.
We talked about, say, for example, we've been having in deacons meeting conversations about what right-handed fellowship looks like.
Okay.
Right. And we most recently had a conversation. I hope I'm not saying too much. I probably am, but whatever. We most recently had a conversation about, other ways that people do right-handed fellowship.
Okay.
Because what we are seeing is there are folks who will join that won't come back for a first Sunday right hand of fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those people won't come back because they work on Sundays.
Okay. Yes.
And the Sunday that they came was the only Sunday they had.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it look like to find a way to keep the spirit of the tradition
Mm-hmm.
for somebody who's never going to be there on the first Sunday?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the conversations we have to have as we talk about being an intergenerational church that continues to live and thrive and go into the 21st and preferably the 22nd century.
Mm-hmm.
Is how do we, because not just has the community changed, the way people work has changed.
Okay. Yes.
The way people worship has changed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think I was reading recently that the average churchgoer now goes once or twice a month, something like that. All right. So if I'm still in the mind that you're going to be here every week,
Mm-hmm.
and I pray that you do, whoever's watching, right? But that I'm preparing a different way
Mm-hmm.
than what the reality of today may be, which is why we have to have high level virtual presentation. It's
Mm-hmm.
as important as what we do in the room.
Yes.
We've got
Yes.
a subscribership on YouTube. It's over 1,000 people. And on Facebook and
Okay.
YouTube on a given week, live that are watching us, I think somewhere between 200 or 300 in the moment that are
Okay.
watching
All right.
online.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there may be 300 sitting in the room. So you have just as many that are watching in real time. I'm not talking about that are going to watch later when they come home from their church. I'm
All
talking
right.
about as we are doing it.
Okay. Okay.
And so I think if that is the case, if we've got 3 to 4 in the room and 3 to 4 that are watching online, they both have to be done well. And our virtual has to be done in the spirit that we would do it in the worship experience there.
Okay.
And
Yes.
if I'm expecting a spirit of excellence in the house, then I also am expecting that we do what we got to do, that we have to be excellent on the broadcast. And so we continue to
Yes.
tweak,
Yes.
and we continue to, and I pray, shout out to our audiovisual team. I pray that they don't think I'm a taskmaster. I try not to be. But I do want us to continuously innovate with also a spirit of reverence,
Okay.
and so we don't have a big crane in the building or a drone that's flying around doing worship, because I be watching. Even people moving around can be uncomfortable for folks in worship. Watching
Okay.
camera people move around.
Okay.
I know it. I see it. I see it. I know it's uncomfortable. So trying to do it in a way that gives us progression without being too much, and not being irreverent. And that's a challenge.
That can be a challenge. I know, an extra challenge. Before broadcasting, if something went awry in service, only the people who were right there, saw it and could talk about it like, ooh, did you see that? Now you're broadcasting, and you have to be, I say, aware, and you care about what your viewing audience, your viewing worshipers are. What's the experience like for them? So I give kudos to all camera people who are trying to do what they need to do to get the right shots and angles and move about, so that people who are watching it also get a feel for the service.
But I say this, before we have to take a break in this section. But, I think one of the ways from a leadership perspective is, as I'm considering how we do what we do, uniforms are helpful. Maybe, I know that like in certain churches, all of the production people wear black.
Oh, okay.
It's just
Okay,
less
I have seen
noticeable.
that. Okay.
There's
All
certain roped off areas where so we're trying to be thoughtful about that as well.
Okay.
I don't want it to seem like what I'm saying is, pastor is thoughtful and wanting to ensure that we are progressing while still being reverent and being attentive.
So maybe we're hearing something on your wish list kind of thing as you prepare.
Yeah.